Good evening, members and colleagues. On behalf of BSL, I welcome you all to this Good Earth Commune webinar series. I'm happy to host this webinar on behalf of BSL. My name is Parag Merchant. I've had the opportunity to be in the garment industry for more than 2 decades, of which 12 years or more have been in global sourcing. My keen interest in sustainability has me constantly learning this subject and getting certifications. On this series, esteemed people like Ruchita Chabra, Karun Tyagi, and others have given us knowledge on varied aspects of sustainability. Sustainability is our common future. It has been said, we are the first generation of human race to feel the effect of climate change and the last generation to do something about it. This is the decisive decade of 2020-2030, and we are the people to lead it. The Brundtland Report profoundly describes, and I quote, our development must meet the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs, unquote. I think we owe that much at least to our next generations. With these few sentences, I would like to begin today's Good Earth webinar series by introducing our speakers for the day. We have Ms. Lisa Menezes and Mr. Sriram who will be speaking to us today. Nisha Menezes has been in the service industry for over 18 years across India and Southeast Asia. She's a banker turned sustainability expert and has worked at Stanchart, Citibank, Julius Baer, and Grab over the years. Today, as director at PwC, she leads the ESG strategy practice across South and East India. She helps clients with when, how, and where to integrate ESG strategy in their organizations. From creating good governance to implementing best practices on decarbonization, water and waste efficiencies, to ESG reporting and ratings. Nisha has been working with various clients across India. Nisha will be guiding us on demystifying ESG. We have Mr. Sriram of Smarta Dharma. His organization facilitates the sustainability journey relating to building and infrastructure. Sriram has worked on technology in the USA and in India. He's worked on policy level implementation solutions with the government of Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh. Sriram is a TEDx speaker and an Ashoka Fellow. Sriram will tell us about the strands of sustainability for future readiness. So, with the ground set for today's session, let us first learn from Nisha about how we demystify ESG and then go over to Sriram, who will tell us about the future for sustainability.
So yes, so today's topic is ESG, and can you see my screen?
Yes,
can everybody
clear.
see my screen? All right, so I think everybody has been hearing this word ESG a lot over the last, say, 1.5 years. And what I am going to attempt to do in the next, say, 20 to 30 minutes is basically run you through what is ESG, what does it really mean, and how it is that you can approach it to integrate ESG across your organizations. So we will have a Q&A session at the end of it. So if you have any questions, then feel free to ask me at that time. So what is ESG? So ESG has 3 pillars: the environmental pillar, the social pillar, and the governance pillar. Now, the environmental pillar per se is split into, the 5 topics that you see around here, which is around climate change, natural resources, environmental opportunities, biodiversity, and pollution and waste. The social pillar touches upon everything that is linked to people. Now, this could be people within your organization. It could be people that support you in doing business. And it could be your clients as well as, public at large. So the larger community per se. So everything that would impact, or there are opportunities in which an organization can make a positive change or a positive impact, primarily comes under the social pillar. So which is why you will see topics like human capital, social opportunities, your tax contribution, which is a huge social contribution that companies make, as well as the safety of your product that you put out in the market. The governance pillar has 2 broad themes. One is your management the right management in the right position? Are they capable leaders? Are they diverse leaders? By diversity, I mean, is there a fair mix of men and women? Do they come from different backgrounds? And to help navigate through challenges that any organization would face. So, one is focused entirely on the management per se. The other part of governance, which we have, is focused on how does your organization then, integrate ESG or drive through the right policies and the right governance and behavior in their processes through their policies. And is there a two-way communication between different stakeholders through your grievance mechanisms? Now, all of this indicates that, a company is being ethical, they have the right policies, people are being trained on the ground on how and what, and how they should be behaving when they engage in business, when they're part of your organization. Now, there are under each of these broad headers, there are around 40 to 41 material topics that we drill down into. And every organization needs to focus on this based on their priorities and based on the sector in order to be ESG, positive or impactful as an organization. So ESG is not just about good intentions, right? It's not a philanthropic effort. It is not your CSR. This is not about just making a positive impact. This actually has business value. So on the right hand side, you will see the pillars that I just laid out. What does it really mean when it comes to your organization? So when you look at the workplace, you will see it's a lot to do with your social pillar. So it'll be about your talent attraction. How do you train them? How do you retain them? What is the diversity and inclusion programs you have? That means, do you have maternity leave as well as paternity leave? Is your workplace a safe place for them to work? When you look at the community, you will see that, is human rights being done correctly? Are you all advocates of human rights in your organization? Are your plants, your factories, the way you treat people within the organization, as well as outside, is that being done for the betterment and upliftment of your local community? Are your CSR programs aligned to the needs, based on what your local communities need and not what your chairman or your management is saying? That is what ESG is. When you look at the environmental pillar, it will be a lot around waste management. How are you utilizing textile waste? How are you bringing it back into your production? What are the kind of chemicals you're using? How much energy you use? Are you moving to renewable energy, or are you still using fossil fuel or coal or heat-based fuel to run your factories? And are you actually preserving the biodiversity of the land around you? Or are you building more and more plants and reducing the green footprint around your communities? When it comes to the marketplace, ESG transforms into, are your products responsible? Are the dyes that you use, not detrimental to people? Is your supply chain built solidly so that even if we go through another COVID, it is resilient? Your production does not get disrupted, and your clients are not, or your customers are not impacted by it. So, and the most important thing that's coming up in the textile and the apparel sector is around responsible marketing. So the labeling that you put on your clothes that you sell or you produce, are they actually what you say it is? And is this certified by a third party? So these are the things that come into what is ESG within an organization like yours. And what is the outcome that you can actually derive out of this? What we have seen in the market today is that ESG actually drives better performance of an organization. If you were to manage all of the things on the right hand side well, then you would not be paying too high an insurance or a premium whenever there is a mishap or an accident on your shop floor. If you were doing all of the things right on the right hand side, then your reputation and ratings would continue to flourish, and your brand and your entity would actually benefit from it, because there is no adverse news hitting the market, either when to do with management or to do with your workplace or to do with the people. So it would be run ethically and responsibly. An interesting thing that we've seen change in the last few years is that when an organization approach well and they have clear metrics to guide their performance and track it, they can actually go to banks today like SBI or HDFC or HSBC and actually access finance and raise capital that is at least um, 10 to 50 bips or 70 bips sometimes lower than what it is in the market, because there are investors constantly looking at sustainable companies to invest in, sustainable ideas to invest in, and that's where ESG comes in. We have also noticed that it increases business opportunities. And by business opportunities, it would mean that, it's linked to your innovation. It's linked to you looking at different raw materials basically to come out with different kind of textiles. Now, this is done primarily from a business perspective, as well as ensuring that there is longevity to your price sensitive. So if there are certain raw materials that are becoming expensive, then your business team might look at how do we reduce the cost, how do we innovate, and how do we come up with a new business opportunity or a new textile perhaps that we can launch in the market in order to continue putting out garments. And the last thing and most important thing is our organizations are made of people. So as you start interacting with the younger generation today, you will notice that they want to work in a company that is purpose led. They want to be part of the larger picture, something positive. And word of mouth actually helps build your brand, as well as attract the right kind of talent in your organization. So we have noticed that when you focus on everything that is on the right hand side of this chart, there are these things, these 5 factors on the left hand side that starts to fall in place. And these are your outcomes. So where is ESG really picking up? Where are we, why has this become such a hot topic, and where are the drivers from? So PwC did a survey asked, what do you think? We asked consumers, we asked business leaders and employees, and we said, tell us, what do you think we should be focusing on? And what do you think ESG, what are the key levers that companies need to make when it comes to this? You will see that 76% of consumers said that if an organization that they're buying from does not treat the environment or their employees or their communities well, they will actually stop buying, or they will buy less and less from that company. That's what your consumers are saying today. So if you look at the middle chart that we have, you will see in pink, we have consumers that we've listed out. In yellow are employees. And this is, a split between, you will see that there is a close correlation between how employees react as well as how consumers react. Whether it comes to the environmental norms of a company, social pillars of a company, or the governance pillars of a company. On the other hand, business leaders believe and they see that, energy, the world is changing. In the next 5 to 10 years, there they have said that the way they do business today is not going to continue. Something has got to give. And they believe that ESG has become very, very important and integral to the way they run their organizations today. So, at the back, how does it translate in your company? How does it impact your different people who actually are business drivers or decision makers in your company? We've noticed that a lot of companies in your sector have started to take action. So, if you look at it, a lot of the action in the textile and the apparel sector has been focused around energy, how to move towards renewable energy. In India, we have made a commitment to basically be net zero by 2070. So you will see a lot of the organizations here, and we work with a lot of them. They've started to adopt net zero goals. They've started to look at, carbon neutral goals, which is 100% renewable energy goals. And they're building their plans to transition into that. The other area that we've noticed a lot of companies make a difference today and make commitments is around their water footprint. Water is very, very essential for the garments that we actually put out. So India is a high, you could say, water stress or country in that sense. So companies have started to really look at their water risks around the plants that they have. They've tried to see what can be and how is it that they can save water. So efficiencies around water have has become one of the key plans that they implement. They've started to look at how can they recycle any water waste rather than putting it out. Yes, there are zero liquid discharge plants everywhere, but the idea is that how do you then use that water back into your facilities, whether it's maintaining your gardens, whether it is putting it back into your system through reverse osmosis. These are things that companies are spending more and more on. And the third thing that you would see that'll start picking up and has started to gather steam is around doing a water risk assessment. So companies have started to look at these are the plants, but where is it that groundwater and fresh water has become hard for me to get? And is it going to become impossible in the next 5 to 10 years for me to continue getting the water supply I need? And they have started to push governments to look at recycling water, setting up recycling facilities so that their water access is not cut off in the long run. So these are plans that companies have started to do. But you can do this only once you've done a risk assessment of your water footprint. The other important area that has come up is circularity. So you see a lot of companies, for example, H&M has made a commitment that they will use 100% sustainably sourced materials. Now, these are certified materials, they could be reused materials, they could be recycled materials. So the idea is that, garments today are thrown, they go to landfill mostly. So how is it that we can recover that? Is there any reuse for that? And how can we put it back into production? So a lot of companies, a lot of brands across in India, overseas, have started to make these commitments. You will also see that there are a lot of funding that goes into support this because this is an entire value chain that needs to change. So there are investments coming up to improve tracking of your supply chain, to understand what are the challenges if some of your suppliers need to move to renewable energy. Is there a way that you can give them financing for it? What can you do with agricultural crop, from where your raw materials itself start? So there is an entire value chain intervention that is also happening, to support this. So when you look at this, at the end of the day, when an organization actually looks at ESG and puts out their performance and puts out, what they look at, they are rated by external agencies. And those external agencies, we've listed a few of them. Some of them are called Sustainalytics or S&P Global or Bloomberg. And this data on companies or on brands is actually evaluated by investors. So they look at a company and say, is a brand or an organization, how are they approaching ESG? What has their performance been for the past few years? If I were to increase my funding to them, am I going to be exposed to environmental risk or any social risk, or will I actually get a good value for the investment that I make? So there's been a lot of these rating agencies blooming up, and you will see that in India, SEBI has also started to look at rating agencies specifically to see whether the data that companies put out are good. Now, the consumers of this data are primarily investors. They are the ones, the analysts that will crunch in the numbers and say, this is the value of loans or investments we need to make. This is your risk exposure. This is the interest rate rate at rate at which we need to give this to a company. Now, this is not only for the textile sector, right? This is across sectors. And there are companies that actually say if a company is doing very well, we will actually support innovation there because they've been seen to be ESG leaders. So you will see a lot of investments, a lot of companies coming together in order to build these traceability solutions or efficiency monitoring solutions so that different players in the market can come together and support it. So we see this happening at every leg or every, the whole value stream or the business chain around textile as well as apparels. And then you have the regulators. So the regulators are the ones building norms. You would have seen EU come up with greenwashing norms because there's been a lot of hue and cry by consumers saying there are so many labels, we don't know if it's true. A lot of companies have gotten fined by it as well. So there are regulators in India as well as overseas who've started looking at what are the standardization that we can bring about? How do we ensure that there is transparency, there is accuracy in the data that's put out, and there is liability as well. There's some sort of ownership as well that companies can take. So when you look at this, this is the 360-degree, interaction of ESG across the textile and apparel sector. But as this investment is growing, what we have noticed is that we need $30 billion in order to attain ESG targets. And if you look at where this money really needs to go and support ESG in your sector, in this sector, it is primarily to reduce GHG emission. To address climate change, organizations need to focus on their carbon emissions and reducing their footprint. If you look at it here, basically the yarn to garment chain, that's the place where the emissions is the highest. And while some companies who are brand companies who might say, I only buy textiles, you have an opportunity to influence that change and say, I have chosen to be a net zero company. I want my suppliers to align to it. So you do have that option as well as you can say the ability to drive change and help this entire value chain become more carbon efficient in that sense. And the other area where investments is really required is in reducing the water footprint across the value stream. As you can see, upstream production of garments actually takes 68% water intensive compared to brand operations and usage of, and end use of garments in that sense.
Nisha,
So, yes.
Sorry, you will have 5 more minutes to complete this. We have to then move to the next speaker.
Yes, I will be quick. So
Okay,
I will jump through the slide and basically say, so where are the ESG risks that that we need to
sure.
focus on as organizations? So we need to focus on data transparency, we need to focus on pollution and waste, we need to focus on ethical labeling as an organization, we need to focus on collection and recycling, and ensuring that bottlenecks are addressed. So these would be the key topics that organizations would have to focus on. So what happens if you do not actually focus on ESG? And what we've witnessed is, and the ones that you see in red are about this sector. We have seen that companies have been fined, that there are lawsuits that have been brought upon them. There's class action lawsuits that have come up. There have been companies that have been asked to stop putting certain labels on their products. So it is imperative that before this happens, that companies stop, have a look at how they're running their operations, look at their ESG, and then basically come up with how will they tackle this and what will they do. But where do you begin? As in, how do you start this journey? Or if you have started this journey, what are things that you can do? Organizations, whether you are far ahead in the ESG journey or you're starting off, there are three things that you have to consistently do as an organization. One is you need to plan. You need to understand what is your market that you're working in today, what are your competitors doing, what are the targets that you want to set up, and how and who is going to achieve it. Once you've done this planning, the next part is acting on it. So the acting is focusing on your targets. How are you going to achieve it? Looking at your policies, looking at your implementation roadmaps if you want to be net zero, for example, or you want to drive circularity in your organization. These are long-term journeys that a company would need to take, or 2-year activity. And one thing while you're doing this, as you continue on ESG journey, would be is stay relevant. Once you've planned and once you're acting, you need to start communicating. Because today, in India especially, we do not communicate enough. We are not transparent enough. So it is important that you put this information out to know what you're doing on your websites, you communicate it to your investors, you communicate it via annual reports, and through your certifications of the garments or the textiles that you put out, because that is important. It will give you business value, as well as help you drive better business opportunities. And one thing while you're doing this, as you continue on ESG journey, would be is stay relevant. Keep a lookout for the changing regulations that are coming, because there are a lot of regulations that are being mandated. Not only in India, there are mandates that are coming up in the EU as well as the US. For example, just in this year, there has been increased scrutiny on human rights. There will be a lot more human rights audits that will happen on Indian companies, no matter which sector they are. There will be a lot of questions around your environmental targets and your performance. And this is happening through external, the US and EU putting pressure, as well as helping drive better business opportunities. And one thing while you're doing this, as you continue on ESG journey, would be is stay relevant. Keep a lookout for the changing regulations that are coming, where there are these mandates that have come about that focuses on the environmental pillar and the social pillar. So these are the two things that I would actually leave you with when it comes to ESG. Thank you so much.